Hey, what is up guys? I'm KBHD here, and HD stands for high definition, which is short for lots of pixels. The more pixels, the better. So as you can imagine, the high definition or high resolution phones out there tend to provide an experience just a step above all the other phones. The highest resolution phones that we're seeing right now are at a resolution of 1920 by 1080. So as you can imagine, we're going to go ahead and take a look at the best of them. Today we're going to count down the top 5 best 1080p smartphones right now. 5 is the Sony Xperia Z/ZL. This is one of the best looking phones of the year. It's pretty much the hands down #1 for design. So if you're counting down best design phones, I would have to give that #1. It is a water resistant phone, and it's actually a really fast phone too. So it's a really handsome and really speedy device, which is why people like it so much. When I reviewed it, I kind of deemed it a bit of a mixed bag though. If you want to watch the full reviews to any of these, they will be linked down below the like button. But the main flaw with the Sony Xperia Z was the display. It didn't have the best contrast in the world, and it had subpar viewing angles. So we couldn't give that the best score possible, or I couldn't give that the best score possible, but it's definitely a very good looking phone, and it easily takes #5 on this list because of the raw speed and the handsomeness. #4 is the HTC Butterfly. This is also known in the United States as the Droid DNA. It's a red and black version, and it's the first 1080p phone with LTE. Now we would also expect to have a 1080p phone with LTE have a huge battery, but it didn't. It had a 2020 milliamp hour battery, so that was probably its biggest weakness in battery life, but overall it was, again, a very well-built HTC phone. It had a polycarbonate back, very nice, basically unibody construction. It felt great in the hand, and of course it had an awesome 1080p display. So that was pretty much the primer for getting 1080p phones going in the United States. It was basically first in the US, and that's why it was so popular immediately on Verizon, and the Butterfly is really popular now worldwide. So the HTC Butterfly is a great looking phone as well. It came with Sense 4 Plus, not Sense 5, so it's not the newest version of Sense, but we'll get to that later. But yeah, it's a pretty solid phone. It takes a spot over the Sony Xperia Z because it has a much better 1080p panel. #3 is the Oppo Find 5. Now this is actually technically the first 1920 by 1080 display. I first did a video about this before the idea was even out there, and 1080p displays on phones were sort of unheard of, a bit unrealistic. But this was first, and it brought itself first to China, and the Oppo Find 5 is a dream on the spec sheet. The hardware lineup that they put into this phone is absurd. It's insane. It's made out of completely steel. It's a unibody construction again, has a 13 megapixel camera. The Snapdragon S4 Pro had the latest version of Android when it came out. Just an all-around awesome beast of a device. It's still catching up on the hardware and the software front because, well, it doesn't have Sense or TouchWiz or anything. It doesn't have years of experience with software to grow on. So they're just now getting back into it with Project Firefly, getting back onto the road for increasing in terms of value with software. So they don't have the years of experience that HTC or Samsung might have with building on software. But the Oppo Find 5 is a damn good phone on the hardware front, and that's why it takes all around #3. So #2 is the Samsung Galaxy S4. This is one of the most anticipated phones of the year 2013. You could argue that the Galaxy S3 was the phone of the year for 2012. So the Galaxy S4 follows up with a really, really powerful smartphone. First of all, it is an 8-core CPU in the international version. The i9500 is a boss on paper, has a 2,500 milliamp hour battery, has a 13 megapixel camera. You could argue that this is the perfect phone, minus some very, very small complaints that have been called out about it. #1 is it's still an AMOLED display, so it's not the brightest display outdoors. You can take the Galaxy S3 and another IPS phone outside, and you'll see that the Galaxy S3 with its AMOLED display is not nearly as bright as something like the Oppo Find 5, which has a much brighter IPS display. So the one big complaint about it was the dimness of the AMOLED displays, and the other big complaint about it was the build quality, and it's still made of that same Samsung plastic. Now the Galaxy S3 had a sort of hyperglaze finish on the back, so it was definitely slippery, and you could tell and feel that it was plastic. It was thin, it was flexible, it was cheap. The Galaxy S4 has a slightly different finish, but it's still plastic, so it's hard to tell that if it's a major improvement or not. Outside of that, those are the only two main complaints about the Galaxy S4. Outside of, yeah, it's a really impressive phone on the hardware front. That's why it takes #2. And that means #1 is the HTC One. Every single review of this phone has been glowingly positive because this thing is off the charts good on the hardware front and on the software front. The HTC One is so good that the biggest complaint about it tends to be the fact that it's sealed in so you can't replace the battery, and the fact that the camera is only 4 megapixels. I've done a separate video on why the camera is only 4 megapixels, so if you want to check that out, there's a reason there, but that's the biggest complaint about the HTC One. It is an awesome all-around phone on the hardware side because it has a large battery, an all-aluminum build, it has a really, really rock-solid processor. Just the Snapdragon 600 kills benchmarks if you haven't already seen, so it is an awesome phone coming to the United States. And on the software side of things, HTC Sense 5 is brand new. It runs on the latest version of Android 4. It's really good, and it's probably a big reason why the HTC One is going to be the flagship for HTC all year. So the overall package of completing awesome hardware that's just compelling and good and feels good in the hand and just rock solid, plus the software side of things where people actually want to pick up the phone and play with it because the software is awesome, make the HTC One pretty much the best 1080p phone out there right now, plus it's a 4.7-inch display. All the other phones on this list are 5-inch displays. They're 5-inch 1080p phones. This one is a 4.7-inch 1920 by 1080p panel, which gives it the highest pixel density of any of the ones here. So if you want to talk about HD, that is a seriously high definition phone right there. So there you go, guys. Those are the top 5 1080p phones out right now. You may have noticed something about this list. Every single phone on this list that I just mentioned is an Android phone. There were no iPhones on this list, there were no Windows phones on this list, there were no Blackberries on this list. And that's because there are no 1080p Blackberries, there are no 1080p iPhones, and there are no 1080p Windows phones. And that's just the nature of pushing the pace when you have manufacturers developing on an open platform. I hope we'll see 1080p Windows phones soon. I think we'll probably see a 1080p iPhone somewhere in the next 2 years. Don't know if we'll see a 1080p Blackberry, but definitely keep an eye out. The horizon, I'll say, is open. We don't exactly know what all these manufacturers have up their sleeves, or if we're going to see even higher resolution phones down the line. Also, a common question, or a common comment I get, I just want to say, are people saying, do we really need 1080p phones? Do we actually need a phone with such a high pixel density? No, you don't need a phone with such a high pixel density, but it's damn good looking, and you better believe that it looks better than a 720p phone. That's for sure. So that's it. That's the end of the video. If you agree with this list, definitely let me know below. Or if you don't, let me know why. What was your number one? Maybe it was different. Definitely leave a comment down below that like button. But I'll be checking them out. You can see me replying down below. Thanks for watching, guys, and I will talk to you guys in the next video. Peace.